So our father always said, if you want to create change, and even to translate that into what we're talking about, if you want to create change in an organization, be a sheepdog instead of a bulldog. Go about your goals steadily, consistently, one small step at a time, kind of hide in the grass, and you'll get your desired outcome.
That's a mic drop right there. That is so powerful. I certainly have been guilty of being that bulldog in the past. It's taken me almost 5 decades to waking up to becoming more. Certainly my intention is to become more of that sheepdog. On today's show, I am delighted to welcome the wonderful Ryan Tierney. Ryan is the co-founder of Seeding Matters, a specialist in therapeutic seeding. They're supporting patients across the world. Ryan is the co-founder of Seeding Matters with his brothers Jonathan and Martin. It was a late night encounter with an American business leader that led Ryan down the rabbit hole of all things lean. Trauma, I think, triggered his change, and we're going to dig into that deeply today. Ryan has been on this incredible transformation. Not only is he living lean, learning lean, teaching lean, but I have to say, Mr. Ryan Tierney, you're looking lean as well. You're walking the talk. Ryan, you're very, very welcome to ScaleX Insider.
Thank you, Brendan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely delighted. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So first of all, huge congratulations on your wonderful book, Lean Made Simple. Delighted that you've finally put pen to paper and released this. So it's really, really well done.
Thank you.
I want to open up, as I always do. You know very well our vision is to inspire, connect and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So Ryan, what does scaling with purpose mean to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night because I knew you were going to ask me this. You ask all your guests, you start with the same question at the start of all your episodes. And I was thinking, I actually wrote it down on a bit of paper, scaling with purpose. And then I thought, because I like writing and I come up with ideas when I write. So scaling with purpose. And then I thought, scaling with passion. And then I thought, scale your passion. And then I wrote down, scale your passion. Don't scale your business, scale your passion. And I think that's really what we should be doing, is scaling our passion. Most people focus too much on trying to scale the business. But really, if you're passionate about something, you have an obligation to bring that message to the world. So I think it's more about scaling your passion than scaling the business. And you might even find, or some people might find, that they're not even in the right business. They're not in the business that they're passionate about. So once you find your passion, as I have, which I'm really thankful that I have, once you find your passion, it's so easy to scale that. So it's maybe a quote for your marketing for simple scaling. Don't scale your business, scale your passion.
Yeah, I love that, because I often say that your business is just a fuller expression of you.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that in evidence right across your wonderful business here.
Yeah.
We have the privilege of being actually in Seeding Matters today. And as with everything you do it to a world-class standard, including your wonderful podcast studio here. I do assert that if you've got a wonderful product or service, then you've an obligation to bring that to the world. And certainly you are bringing this to the world. Not only the product, but the way the product is actually manufactured, the culture that you're creating here. So let's just go back to that night. I alluded to it in the opening. And I do believe that people often wait on trauma to trigger change. I mean, everything that you're doing now, you're appealing to people to not wait on the trauma before they trigger the change. But can you bring us back to that that night when you're sitting alone at your kitchen table in kind of desperation?
Yeah.
What were you feeling? What was going on in the business at that stage? And just share a little bit of that story.
Yeah, so we started the business in 2008, and the first 7 or 8 years of business was pretty chaotic. We didn't know what we were doing. Myself and my 3 brothers, we were 17, 18 and 19. We didn't go to university, no business degrees. We were kind of making this up as we went along, to be really honest. And we started in a really small workshop behind our family home. We made the first product, the first chair. We sold it locally. We made another one. It started from absolutely nothing, only an idea that our mother had for better seating, better chairs. And so the first 7 or 8 years was kind of stabbing in the dark and just going for it and trying a bit of this and a bit of that. But I'm on the operations and manufacturing side of the business. And for me, life was just chaos. Our business operationally was a mess. Our factory was a mess. We sent defects to our customers on a daily basis with a really high staff turnover. The place was dirty. The place was dark. It really wasn't a nice environment for working in. And I was stressed out. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I really wasn't in a good place. And, if any of the listeners think of the worst company they've ever heard of or seen, we were that company. We were the worst company I've ever seen. Absolute chaos. And I went home one night and I was sitting at my kitchen table with an iPad, and I just said, there has to be a better way. I'm almost getting emotional even thinking back to that time now, because it was a really tough time. And I said, there has to be a better way to run this business. And I started typing in how to manage a factory, how to manage production, really generic terms into YouTube. And I came across this thing called Lean. I'd never heard of it before, didn't know what it was, but something just clicked in my brain and this big light bulb went off. And I was like, wait, why did nobody tell me this before? This is crazy. It was a guy, Paul Akers, that I came across originally. And Paul was doing this tour. He was going around his factory on a scooter, and I thought, this guy's crazy. Talking about this thing called Lean, where everybody in the company makes small improvements every day to make their life and their work better. And part of me thought, is this all kind of made up for YouTube? Is this all edited? Who is this random American crazy person? And so, me being me, I reached out to Paul Akers that day. Like straight away, I took action. And I got on a plane and I went to see him. And what happened over the next few weeks and months was just transformative. When I went to see Paul's factory, I spent a couple of days there. When I went to see his factory, it wasn't like it was on YouTube. It was 10 times better. And I was so excited to start implementing Lean into our business. And thankfully, I stuck at it. Thankfully, I did, because the results and the transformation that we've had has just been incredible.
Well, I can testify to those results. It's a real privilege, and we are blessed to have you guys in Northern Ireland, 60 miles away from our home. We now host our process workshops in your company. We get the honor of actually you sharing the story with the participants in our program. Everything you describe, I'm really struggling to comprehend, because it's the opposite in terms of what I know you to be, the company that you're running, what I witness on your factory floor. Very, very challenging for me to really comprehend that.
Yeah.
Paul, we've both met. You know Paul very, very well. Ironically, I connected with Paul, not in a dissimilar way, actually. And he introduced me to you. I said, who's an exemplar of this Lean that you're talking about? And he says, oh, you must know the Seating Matters guys. I struggled to hear what he was actually saying. And I was, what, Seating Matters? No, I haven't heard of those guys. The Tierney guys, they're smashing it. And so apologies for the American accent there. But he's intensely focused on all things Lean.
Yeah.
I come from a manufacturing
background in terms of I've led a manufacturing business. My understanding of lean whenever I first came across it was this, 5-year degree, and you had to go through these belts, and you were going to be a yellow belt and a green belt and a black belt, and you had to be incredibly clever to really understand this and to apply this in a manufacturing environment. So it wasn't very relatable to me, even though I was leading a manufacturing company. So you're a really practical guy. For those listening, what actually is lean?
Yeah. And one of the things that I get so excited about is breaking down complex things into simple ideas. I just love doing it, because I do think simple, I speak simple, I don't use fancy words. And I think that's why the message is really relatable, because a lot of people like the simplicity of the message. But basically, in one sentence, lean is the accumulation of small ideas from everyone. That's really all it is. Another way of saying it is lean is a system to get more out of life. So I'll just go back to the first one. Lean is the accumulation of small ideas from everyone. 10 years ago, our company was a mess, an absolute mess. And I started myself and maybe one or two others to go around and physically organize the factory, organize production, set up processes, but all the processes fell flat on their face. And then I would get excited and do another blast of improvement, and I would kind of taper off and it would fall flat on its face again. And I realized that there was all these peaks and troughs because there was no culture in place to sustain the change. So the key, and this is the absolute key to efficiency, the key to productivity, the key to lean, is to engage every single person in the company to make small improvements. One or two people can't do this. And that's why, apologies to any lean consultants listening, that's why lean consultancy doesn't really work, because they go into a company for a 3 or 4 week blast and come out again, but they don't embed the culture.
Yeah.
So lean is the accumulation of small ideas from everyone, not the lean team, not the people in operations, everyone. Because the biggest waste of all, there's 8 wastes, which we can get into later if you like, but the biggest waste, just to get straight to the point, is the waste of untapped potential. And every company has a bank or a reserve of talent and ability and knowledge, and they never tap into it. And it's the biggest waste. And that's all lean's doing, is bringing those ideas out.
There's a number of strands to this. Firstly, Einstein has characterized 5 hierarchies of intelligence. It starts with smart, intelligent, brilliant, genius. And transcending all of that is simple. So whilst you're saying, I'm just a simple guy, I like, taking complex things and breaking them down, you're quite exceptional. And there's a couple of things just to share with the listeners. You mentioned right at the outset, you went and visited Paul Akers. You guys, yourself, Martin, Jonathan, always go to the source.
Yeah.
And when I think of the source in terms of what you're saying here, I think of another guy who you guys have visited, Warren Buffett, and his deceased, his wonderful, who's now deceased business partner, Charlie Munger. Yeah. And Charlie Munger talked about the 8th wonder of the world was compound interest. And when you share with me the definition of lean, I think analogous to compound interest is actually compound improvement. Mm-hmm. So in essence, the 8th wonder here is the power, the impact, the efficacy of compound improvements.
Yeah.
So let's just start. It's the question that everyone asks whenever you invite people in to tour the factory. Where do we start? You've laid out, and I encourage everybody to go and grab a copy of your book, 12 Proven Steps for Creating a Vibrant Lean Culture. So let's get into this. What I'd love to do is a little mini masterclass.
Yeah.
what's number one? Where do we start?
Yep. So the reason I wrote the book, Lean Made Simple, is that we do tours all the time. Like there's actually a tour happening right now as we speak. We have 2 or 3 tours a week through our company. And people fly literally, and it's, if somebody would have told me this 10 years ago, people fly from all over the world to see our company. Like last week was Brazil, America, Argentina. This week, Denmark, Norway, England. Literally, they book a flight and they come just for the tour.
Yeah, the irony to this now is you have the Japanese coming in to visit, which is wonderful.
Yeah, the Japanese have been here as well. So people are coming. They love what they see. It's a 4 or 5 hour tour. It's an overload to the senses. You know, they can see what's happening, the color coding, the visuals, the organization, the product flowing through the factory, the people engagement. But then they say, I love it, I get it, but where do we start? What do we actually do? What's the first step? And that's why I wrote the book, because everything in life is a process. How we brush our teeth, how we make our breakfast, how we send an email, how we run a meeting. So why should building a culture be any different? And I seen this massive gap that there was no literature, no books out there for having a process for how to build a lean culture. So if we go back a step and think about what is culture, the simplest version I can think of to explain culture is that it's group habit. Culture is group habit. It's how a group of people act, think, or behave. So in our company, we have a culture where everybody, just without thinking, everybody just improves stuff. We just make stuff better all the time. We have 60 people making small improvements all the time. So it makes sense if you want to find out how to be more efficient, how to increase productivity, you build a culture. Well, then how do you build a culture? Well, there's 12 steps to building a culture, and that's where the book came from. And the first step in the book, and it's number 1 for a reason, is that the leader must be fully engaged in the process. Chapter number 1 is it starts with the leaders.
Yeah. Something that strikes me when you say this, and this is again analogous to something that we always say, which scaling starts from the inside out. Now that sounds a little philosophical, but actually, as we said at the outset, the business is only an expression of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's clear that you have this passion for lean. For those maybe not of an operational mindset, who are not necessarily someone who loves to jump on a JCB loading shovel or spend hours down on a factory floor.
Yeah.
When you say that, you know, it starts with the leader, what does that introspection look like? What process must we go through as a leader to actually arrive at the point where, and I've witnessed this, Beverly, the sewing machinist, is hosting a morning meeting, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
And sharing gratitudes, sharing improvements, inviting discussion from others. And Beverly could be my mother, you know, and I could never envisage my mother standing up there, sharing this stuff, hosting very confidently.
Yeah.
You know, your people didn't rock in one day and start to think about improvements. So when you say, I don't want this to be abstract, when you say it starts with the leader,
Mm-hmm.
what does that start look like?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I always say you don't implement lean or you don't embrace lean. You create a culture that embraces lean. And you can't create a culture until the decision makers, the owners, the senior management say, yes, we're doing this. So if you're listening to this thinking, I'm not really as excited about lean as Ryan and I might never be, that's okay. As long as you give the go ahead for it, as long as it's one of the key pillars of the business, as long as it's an important part of decision making, as long as senior management have the authority and the go ahead to go and implement this, because I've seen so many companies that start lean in one department, and it goes for a while, 3 or 4 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, but then it falls flat again because senior management or the owners of the company aren't really that into it. And if they're not that into it and not supporting it, it'll run for a while, but then it'll fade away. So that's why I put it as number one. The number one step is that the leaders must fully embrace the change. If they're not as excited as me or Paul Akers, that's okay, but you have to give the go-ahead. They have to give the authority to go ahead and put their support behind it.
Yeah, and it's typically seen as the domain of factory managers.
Yeah.
You know, lean is synonymous with manufacturing environments, and there's no accident in that. Its origins are in the Toyota production system.
Yeah.
But actually, what I've witnessed in your business is lean just in every corner. You walk into the accounts office and it's just screaming lean. It's phenomenal. And I think a big part of this is as a result of some of the practical steps that you guys have implemented in order to embed lean right across the business.
Yeah.
Which moves us on to the second step, the morning meeting. Tell us about the morning meeting, because it seems to be a critical part of implementing lean.
It absolutely is. And that's why I put it as one of the steps in one of the chapters of the book, because we tried to do lean without the morning meeting. It sounds like a simple thing, but it is. I just want everybody to internalize how big of a thing this is. We tried to do lean without a morning meeting. So I'll just go back a step and explain the morning meeting. So at our company, we have 60 people. All 60 people gather in our morning meeting area every morning. We have a 15 to 20 minute meeting. We start off with the gratitude. What are we grateful for today? And 3 or 4 people are picked around them. Then we do stretches, which seems very weird and out there for a lot of companies, and it was for us as well. If you see where our factory is located, we're in the middle of the mountains in Limavady. You know, we're not this high-tech.
Yeah, this isn't Silicon Valley.
No, it's not. So this type of thinking was so foreign for us. So if we can do it, anybody can do it. So we start with gratitude, then we do stretches, then we talk about our favourite improvements from yesterday. So we'll just play quick videos, we'll put them up on a big TV, and we show a video from somebody from the accounts office, or somebody from the sewing department, or somebody from the welding area. The next thing we do is we rotate the meeting. So a different person hosts the meeting every day. Because I found when we implemented lean at the start, it was me holding the meetings every day, and people were kind of like, there's Ryan going on about lean again, you know, when's he ever going to give over? But when I stepped back and allowed every other person in the company to take their turn to host a meeting, there was this peer-to-peer learning that took place. Because manager to employee or company owner to employee, there's a different energy there. But when there's peer-to-peer learning, people can actually pick it up quicker. And we found that was one of the most powerful ways to engage and teach lean, was for everybody to teach each other. So
when you started this, you know, Ryan, excited by the YouTube videos, by what Paul Akers was doing, and he's going around his scooter in his factory, and then you're trying to bring this in here.
Yeah.
Completely different cultures, huge contrast in cultures between kind of fast cap then and Seating Matters then. Yeah. Share with me a little bit of the challenges, the discomfort around this morning meeting, you standing up there. What reception did you get when you were summoning people for the first time to come together around as a group? And, you know, was it engagement straight away? Was it rolling eyes? Was it, you know, this is a waste of time? We've just taken 25 minutes out of our production. If I count that by 60 people, like we've wasted hours here when we should be actually, you know, sewing seats.
Yeah.
What was, you know, share with me some of the the challenges and what was going on in your head, in your mind as you were facing those challenges.
Yeah, well, this is actually really interesting, and I don't think I've shared this before on a podcast or a video, but the reason that we didn't hold morning meetings at the start was that me, as one of the company owners, had never stood up in front of all our people before. I'd never done it. And my confidence was at an all-time low. Public speaking was one of my worst nightmares. Even my wedding speech, I'm married 10 years now in a couple of weeks' time, but I still remember my wedding speech. I stressed out about that for about 6 months coming up to the wedding. And that's the reason we didn't do lean, because all the stuff that I'd learned about lean was saying, you have to do a meeting to engage your people, to teach them waste. And I was like, I love lean, I love all the stuff, but I am not doing a meeting. I am not standing up in front of all of our people talking about anything. Never mind lean. I can't do it. I hadn't the confidence to stand up in front of everybody. And that's why we didn't have a morning meeting. And I had to get over myself. And I had to fill myself up with as much energy and knowledge and passion about lean as I could, so that I could overcome that. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me. And once I got over that, and I think that's now why people can relate to Lean Made Simple and relate to what we're doing, because there's loads of company owners out there that aren't the most confident person in the room. There's this misconception that if you're a company owner, you're brilliant at all this stuff, and that wasn't me at all. Out of the three of us, the three brothers, Jonathan and Martin, they're the sales guys. They're out talking to customers. They're doing presentations. I was the one running the factory. I was in the background, and I had never done anything like this before. So I've never shared this before. So this is a first. But that's the biggest challenge for me, was putting myself out there.
Yeah, and I know the three of you guys well at this stage, and it's fair to say you are the quieter, more introverted of the Trinity, of the Tierney Trinity. Something that Rob Dial shared with me on the podcast last season. He hosts a podcast, a couple of million subscribers on YouTube. He goes by the moniker The Mindset Mentor, and I poked at this discernment of fear, because it's a genuine fear, and actually you should move away from it, and fear because it's discomfort, but actually engaging with that discomfort is going to lead to growth of self, growth of your team, growth of the organization. And a question that he invited me and the listeners to pose is this discomfort I'm about to face now, that I'm contemplating leaning into, going to bring me closer to my goals or away from my goals?
Yeah.
Now, I'm able to share that language now. I'm sure that wasn't the language as you were journaling on the morning where you're about to present.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at a point where you, in your words, got over yourself and put yourself in that situation of absolute discomfort for something greater? What decision did you come up with, or was it such that you were experiencing so much trauma on the operations side of the business that it was a case of, well, if it's not this, what is it?
Yeah. Well, I think a reason that most people don't take massive action is that they're not feeling enough hurt or enough trauma, or it's not bad enough to do anything about. And the situation was so bad, I had to do something. And it was either go this way or remain the way it is. And I didn't want the business or my life to stay the way it was. So I had to move on. But this is interesting. The way I done that was that I applied lean principles. So lean is the accumulation of small ideas. And we all understand that small ideas add up. But I have internalized the point that small ideas add up. If you make one improvement per day, it's not a graph like this. It's an exponential graph over the next 10 years. So we've been doing lean for 10 years every single day, and the results are exponential. So I applied that same thinking to the first morning meeting. Right, what's the one simple thing I can do? I don't have to do a TED talk. It doesn't have to be this massive presentation. What's the one simple thing I can do? So I started with a 5-minute morning meeting. Then I prepared 5 questions. Then we got a TV. Then we got an iPad to help with the presentation. So small incremental improvements. So the first meeting was an A4 laminated page with 5 questions on it, and I was hiding behind the page. Then the next day I was able to drop the page and kind of relax a bit. The next day I would move my hands. The next day I would ask someone a question. So small incremental improvements. And that's what lean is small incremental improvements. So if you want to transform your business, transform your body, transform your life, what's one thing you can do today?
Yeah, there's so much in this. And what we're appealing to people to do is take that minimum viable action, which is just bringing them a little bit closer to their goal. We talk about leading self first before you lead others, before you lead an organization. Mm-hmm. For those who haven't been to Seeding Matters, of course, I encourage you, if you can drive here, jump on a plane to get here, do whatever it takes to get here to witness what you're speaking about, because the ripple effect of you making that one decision to stand up there with the laminated card for a couple of minutes in extreme discomfort has now, roll on 10 years later, led to you becoming a global exemplar of all things lean, people, as you shared, visiting from right across the world. And if you hadn't made that decision, there's a sliding doors moment there where what would life have been like if you hadn't made that decision to embrace your discomfort? And I suspect that it would just have continued to lead to frustration with yourself, which would have been expressed then in frustration with your team, the organization. And what we typically do is then use all sorts of excuses to say, well, our seats aren't good enough, the economy's difficult, interest rates are high, all of those things that we use as external excuses why we won't change. Just before we move on from the morning meeting, and I'm conscious we've 12 to go through, but the first 2 are really, really critical, I feel, and people are always curious about the morning meeting. We'll signpost people to your wonderful YouTube channel in terms of the getting into the detail of the morning meeting, but the practicalities. Does it have to be every morning? If I'm starting, can it be once a week? If I'm running a remote organization, if I'm in a knowledge-based industry and not in a factory environment, does all of this apply? How can we kind of practically implement it for remote workers, for knowledge-based workers? Can you share a little bit about that, Mark?
Yeah. The first thing is that lean works everywhere. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what business you're in. In fact, I even encourage people to not call it lean. Call it whatever suits your company. Call it getting better every day. Call it continuous improvement. Call it Kaizen. Put whatever name you want on it, and find a name or a terminology that fits your business. We call it lean. We started calling it lean and we continued, but there's loads of companies that come here on tour and they say lean has this. It almost has a negative connotation to it sometimes because, we tried that lean thing in the past and it didn't work, or people see lean as this thing to get more done with less people and all this. There's all these misconceptions around lean. So I would encourage people to not even call it lean, call it whatever suits your business. So once we've got that out of the way, the next stage is how do you implement this and how do you implement the morning meeting? The exact same as the way we just done 1 a week. Then we built it up to 2 a week, then 3 a week, then 4 a week. Then we do a morning meeting every day now. But for somebody to start from zero that has never heard of lean, possibly coming across lean for the first time on this podcast, I would encourage you to start with 1 morning meeting a week, even 1 every 2 weeks. Just it's small improvements, small gradual improvements. That's how we do everything. It's the Japanese talk about stable change. and this is something that I've internalized, is this idea of stable change. The worst thing we can do is, or the worst thing somebody listening to this can do, is go back to their company and say, I've heard this podcast. It's this thing called Lean. We're going to rip the whole place apart. It just doesn't work like that. You're better going slow and steady and creating stable change, small improvements. Extraordinary results are gained by ordinary things over a prolonged period of time. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's that consistency of implementation. And go back to something that I read years ago and has really stuck with me, is it's the start that stops most people.
Yes.
And we're just appealing to people to make that start. Begin, embrace your discomfort and the understanding that there's a bigger prize. There's a bigger prize for you. There's a bigger prize for your team. There's a bigger prize for your organization.
Yeah.
And can you imagine the number of patients who wouldn't have access to your incredible seats, your incredible product, if you hadn't have taken that step? And I love the fact that you're calling out the kind of the lean label. You know, don't call it lean. Sir Dave Brailsford, who is famous for socializing this concept of marginal gains. It's exactly the same thing. The 1% improvements every time. He embedded it in the Sky Cycling team. You know, looked at kind of bringing the athletes mattresses and pillows to help with their sleep. If they could just get 1% more on their sleep score. And he looked at that right across the entire organization. And of course, the Olympic cycling team went on to smash all previous records as a result of his involvement of socializing this idea of compound improvements just in the marginal improvements label. So I love the fact, drop the lean label. Create a lean leaders group. Step number 3, you talked about the importance of kind of this peer-to-peer learning. So lean leaders group, you know, presumably you're looking down those first few meetings, seeing whose eyes are lighting up. How do we go about creating this lean leaders group?
Yep, it's a key component to building the vibrant lean culture, because this is hard work. It's not an easy thing to do, and I'm very open about that. If it was easy, every company would be doing lean. So one of the ways to make it easier is to have a group of people that are behind the idea and driving the change. And this is something that I didn't do, and that's why I've put it in the book. We didn't do it early enough. So there was me and maybe one or two others really trying to drive this change, drive the change. And then when I stepped back and said, okay, what if I could just focus on 8 people? You know, we had maybe 40 people back at that time. If I could focus on 8 people and get them so excited, spend all my time with those 8 people, you know, have learning clubs, have book clubs, let's watch videos together, let's discuss the videos, let's go and see companies, let's tour other factories and bring that knowledge back. And that was the best thing I ever done, because it took the weight off me, and it wasn't Ryan's lean program anymore. It was, no, there's now 8 people that are really excited about this. And then those 8 were able to motivate and inspire the next group. So if there's one takeaway from this podcast or this book, is get a lean leaders group, get a group of people and focus all your energy into them and get them excited to deliver it to the next level.
I love that. And again, that's the start of creating this ripple effect. Initially, you're the stone that drops into the pond, and as the ripple goes out a little bit further, it's that kind of concentration of your focus on 4, 5, 6 people who really grasp this and are excited about this, who are going to share it with 4, 5, 6 others, and all of a sudden kind of the ripple goes, it goes out wider and wider. And something you shared, I get challenged all the time with simple scaling. You know, scaling isn't simple. Well, you're actually confusing the word simple with easy. Simple means uncomplicated, but don't confuse that with not requiring effort. This requires huge effort. This requires you to, as we've shared, embrace a level of discomfort. You're going to have to become a better communicator, a more passionate communicator, a more able communicator, but the prize is significant at the other end of this. Once this initial group get this, creating an example area, step 4, something that really struck me about Paul Aker's teachings is this notion of show, don't tell. Can you share with us a little bit about this?
Yep, this was a massive thing that we done at the start of our lean journey. I had to make lean visual for people. I wanted to show people what lean looked like, because it's okay talking about all the stuff and showing videos and reading books, but I wanted an area of our factory, an area of our company where I could bring people and say, come on over and see exactly what I mean by lean. So we set up one area. It was the frame assembly area. We dialed that place and we painted the floors, new lights, new tools. They're all shadowed. The place was like a tiny, tiny piece of Japan right there in the corner of our factory.
Love it.
And then we were able to bring the accounts team out, the marketing team, the sewing team, and say, this is what we're trying to do. And if you like the idea of that, imagine your work area looking like this. So it started with a physical, because I think people need a physical example, physical representation to kind of instill that thinking. So that physical example in our factory was the best thing we ever done. And I encourage people now that are starting on their lean journey is to focus on one small area, everything we're talking about. Focus on one area, actually one workstation, one desk, one anything, one department, and make that the absolute exemplar of lean. Like, go all in. And then show the before and after photographs or videos to, this is how it was and this is how it looks now.
Something you've hit on there, because to sell this to people, I mean, they're not going to buy into the fact that if we do lean, we're going to become more profitable as a company. This company is going to become more valuable, wonderful for the shareholders.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and I interviewed Joe Polish many seasons ago. He wrote a book called What's in It for Them.
Yeah.
So what's in it for them? What's in it for your people? Showing them this example of what could be.
Yeah.
How do you sell to them that the effort that you should apply now is worth it to get to there? What's in it for them?
Yeah. I talk about something called the lean deal. And this is something that I learned from a guy in Germany, Michael Althoff. I went to visit his company, and he really encouraged me to understand this. This was early in our lean journey. And basically the lean deal is the understanding that there's 3 parties involved here. There's the company, there's the customer, and there's the employees. And lean must work for all 3 parties in order for it to work. So if I went to Cody in the welding area, Cody's one of our welders. If I went to Cody and said, Cody, we're starting this thing called lean, and you have to do all these improvements, reduce the workload, improve lead time so that we can serve the customer better. Cody would say, well, I don't know the customer. I never see the customer. I work in production. There's no connection there. There isn't enough motivation.
Yeah, I'm just welting frames here every day. Like, one frame's the same as the next frame is the same as the next frame.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, that all sounds wonderful, Ryan, and I hear you and all, but
yeah,
ultimately I'm just welting frames here.
So there isn't enough motivation for Cody to act. Similarly, if I went to Cody and said, Cody, if you make all these improvements, we can actually make the company more profitable. What do you think of that? We can, increase the return of investment for the shareholders. Straight away, there's no motivation there for Cody to act. But in the lean deal, we say, okay, Cody, if you can make your job easier, just make your job easier. Focus on fixing things that annoy you. Reduce the struggle. You're going to enjoy work more. You're going to love coming to work. You're going to feel like you're working somewhere where your ideas matter. If you do that, guess what happens? Our lead time reduces, quality gets better, customer service gets better. If we can make all those things better, guess what? We're going to sell more product. And if we sell more product, the business is going to grow. And we're going to have more time to invest in new technologies and more time to invest in a new workstation and a new canteen and a new facility and new whatever. So there's this cycle where all three parties benefit. And this is the bit that it took us 5 years to figure out. Lean will not work until everybody understands that lean is as beneficial for them as it is for the company and the customer.
I love that. The lean deal.
Yeah.
Cody's thumbs up. Ryan, I'm in. I want my job to be easier. I'd love to get away here at 5 o'clock in the evening and spend time with my friends, my family.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. We get into step 5 then. You've got to teach Cody to have waste goggles to be able to see waste.
Yeah.
And this isn't something that is going to be, or maybe it is it intuitive, or what does that teaching look like in practice for Cody to go, yeah, everything you're describing to me, Ryan, that makes complete sense. Of course I want my job to be easier.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing about what you've just shared with me I don't like.
Yeah.
So how do I see waste?
I think the first thing there is that something we talk a lot about is value and non-value. And every time I go to Japan, every time I watch another video, every time I read another book on lean, my understanding of value changes. So value is anything the customer is willing to pay for, or any time that the product is changing.
Okay.
So those two things. So if we go to the second one, anytime the product is changing, we'll go back to Cody again. If Cody is in the welding department, the second that those two bits of metal are being welded together is value. And anything else, whether we like it or not, is waste or non-value. So walking to get the metal, asking somebody a question, looking for your tools, all these things are non-value. So all we're trying to do in the spirit of continuous improvement, in the spirit of lean, is to reduce non-value. How do we reduce non-value? You just make small improvements. So today we would have made 30 or 40 or 50 improvements to our factory, like right here this morning. Somebody would have labeled their tool. Somebody would have made a place for their the torch for their welding gun. Somebody would have made a place for the bobbin for their sewing machine. Somebody might have brought a trolley closer to them so they don't have to walk those 5 steps every day. So we're making these small incremental improvements all the time. And the accumulation of these improvements reduce all the non-value. And that's all we're trying to do, is reduce non-value. But the key, back to the step 5, the key is not for me just to see the non-value, it's for everybody to see the non-value. Because then you have a powerhouse, you have a mastermind of every single person in your company coming together to reduce waste.
Yeah.
We say like we're at war with waste.
I love that. I love that. So people are coming in, there's a culture of the collective coming in every day, literally kind of putting their metaphorical waste goggles on, looking for areas within their own domain where they're actually creating non-value or doing non-value activities.
Yeah.
And they're focused on reducing those non-value activities. Integral to that is step number 6, which is something that you introduce into the business, which is a focus on improvement time.
Yeah.
So what does that look like practically?
So practically what that looks like is that before lean, our working hours were 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And our thinking, and most companies' thinking, is that we come to work at 8 o'clock and we start working. What we do, and this was a very foreign idea, what we do is we have a morning meeting for 15 minutes and then we have 30 minutes of improvement time. So we're actually not starting production until 8:45. And at the start, I was getting my calculator out and saying 45 minutes times 50 people, no way, we can't do it. And we struggled to do it. But it wasn't until we implemented improvement time that productivity and efficiency went through the roof. Because we don't get better if we don't take time to get better. So really what we're doing, we've built improvement into our daily kata. We talk about kata, which is our daily routine. Morning meeting, then we improve, then we work. Next.
I love that intentionality. There's a deliberate intention there to be better. There's a deliberate intention there to remove non-value added activities. And I think we're all guilty of being subject to the traditional working paradigm. We all march into factories, clock in at 8 o'clock, get straight onto the tools and march out again. And for many of us, can't wait to march out again at 5 o'clock and start living again. Yeah. The intentionality by which you are focused on removing non-value is quite incredible. And I've witnessed this firsthand. You introduced the first of the Japanese terms, kata. For those who practice martial arts, you'll be familiar with kata as a pattern or routine or ritual, a way of doing things. Step 7 is another Japanese term, yokoten. The step of introducing yokoten into the business. What is yokoten?
Yeah. Yokoten is a Japanese word for sharing ideas laterally across an organization. So very simply, if I lift my phone now, I've got my phone in my hand, and I'm going to go to a WhatsApp group that we have. So this is our Yokoten WhatsApp group. And this is all the improvements we've made today, just today. Like,
for those listening, what Ryan is sharing is quite a number of videos. Now, we're recording this, it's midday, and already there are scores of videos on his WhatsApp channel. The WhatsApp channel is called SM Lean Improvements, so a dedicated WhatsApp channel for people to share their improvements. And is that open to everyone within the company, Ryan? Is it just for, Cody in the welding area? What's the practicalities of that WhatsApp channel?
So everybody in our company is on the WhatsApp channel, and everybody has to upload their improvements. So the purpose of this is to show contrast, because contrast is one of the most powerful ways to learn or to teach. So we put up, and it's really quick, we put up a before video. This is before I had to walk 3 steps to go and get my drill. Hello, it's Kyle here. I'm back here. This is my after. I've moved my drill right beside me, so I'm now registering 600 steps per year. That's all the video is. It's just took on your phone, upload it onto the WhatsApp group, and then we play those videos at the morning meeting the next day. So you can't help but be here and not improve, because everybody around you is improving. It's on the morning meeting, it's on the WhatsApp group. Every time you talk to somebody, they're working on an improvement. It just creates, the Yokoten WhatsApp group just creates this rhythm. It just keeps the rhythm going of improvement.
Yeah, and again, like you've shared that in 60 seconds. But intrinsic in that is so much back to the culture again. The fact that, Beverly in the sewing machine room, Cody, the welder, like they are taking time to share improvements, to actually video these, to put them on a public WhatsApp. Yeah. If we think of how people typically operate, it's walk into the company, keep your head down. Hopefully I'm not noticed and I'll be out of here by 5 o'clock again. You can't contemplate actually putting yourself on a public WhatsApp channel for fear of judgment, for fear of being ridiculed, for fear of comparison. So implied in that kind of simple, back to that word again, that simple step of creating a WhatsApp channel, which is reflective of this Japanese term yokoten, which is sharing ideas laterally, is the fact that the culture supports all of this. People are dying to share their improvements. They don't think about the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, the fear of ridicule, all of those fears that we develop over time. Which brings me to that wonderful James Clear quote that environment is the invisible hand which shapes all human behavior. And something else that he said, which I love in your step 8, is the importance of making improvement easy. So make improving easy. Just share with us a little bit about that, how we can practically make this concept of daily improvement very easy for people.
Yeah. So if we're asking everybody and encouraging everybody to make improvements, well, then the first thing is, how do I do this? How do I make improvements? So it's really, really important, and it's a key step in creating a culture, a lean culture, is that we need to make the process of making improvements easy. We need to improve the process of making improvements. So to make a label, to get a new Stream Deck device for your computer, to save clicks, to create an SOP, a standard work, it should be so easy to do that. Because if the barrier for entry is so low, then the chances are more people are going to do it, and everybody's going to do it. So we went through this for about 2 years where it was just so hard and so much red tape, and this person had to sign it off, then somebody else had to sign off the improvement, and then it got allocated had to come off the budget, and all this nonsense was happening for us to be able to make an improvement or make a change. And we see this a lot with companies that come to visit. Their hands are tied behind their back. They're not allowed to improve. So the whole idea of making improving easy is getting rid of all the red tape. Not in a way that it sacrifices safety or anything, but getting rid of as many barriers as possible to making improvements easy, so that more people are encouraged to do it.
Awareness is key there. What are some of the barriers that are really obvious to you now, but are not necessarily obvious to many others who haven't embarked on this journey?
I would say the biggest barrier is people saying, we've always done it that way and it's okay, just leave it alone. Because in a lean culture with a lean mindset, you're always saying there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And we have 60 people coming to work every day saying there has to be a better way. So it's funny, you see it when people start here on their first or second week. They just, it's such a foreign idea to the fact that you're encouraged to do something different. You're encouraged to challenge the norm. You're encouraged to improve the process. They're almost saying, are you sure I'm allowed to do this? Because in my previous job, my previous career, this would have been such a foreign idea. So the fact that we're allowing and giving people the autonomy and the freedom to go ahead and make something better without all this red tape, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, back to culture again. It's that invitation that's just pervasive within the culture for people to step up and to share an improvement where it's characteristic in most companies just to get on with the job, not to be perceived as challenging, where you're actively goading people into to challenge what you're doing on a daily basis, which I love. Moving to kind of, we'll move through steps 9, 10 and 11 before we wrap up with step 12. So solving your inventory problems, step 9, creating standard operating procedures, step 10, and implementing total ownership. We're getting kind of more specific there, but do you want to share some of the practicalities that are aligned to steps 9 to 11?
Yeah, I would go straight to the create SOP ones, because that's a massive thing. And this is only in the last year and a half where we've really internalized. I talk about this idea of internalizing a lot.
Yeah, it's a word you use a lot, actually, and I found myself using it now as well. I get that, in terms of really not just reading something, but really living what you're reading, true understanding and implementation, as opposed to just, I've heard that before.
So about a year and a half ago, we had the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Amazawa and Mr. Omamura. Mr. Amazawa is the former vice president of Lexus. Mr. Omamura is the president of a tier 2 supplier to Toyota. So both these Japanese guys came to visit our factory, and they absolutely ripped us apart. This is only a year and a half ago.
My God, because I've known this place
Yeah.
for quite a number of years now. I can't imagine what was left to rip apart.
So we're about 8 years into our journey, thinking we're going well, we're getting our head around this lean thing, and they came in and said the main thing they said was that you haven't got enough SOPs or standard operating procedures in your business.
So for people who are hearing that for the first time, again, this is a word or an acronym that's typically synonymous with lean, and I can kind of conscious of people rolling their eyes now. What is a standard operating procedure?
Yeah, well, I rolled my eyes as well for 8 years until I really got this, because a standard operating procedure is basically instructions for how to do something. It's letting someone else know how to do something if you're off. That's how we look at it. So how to set up this podcast room has an SOP. So if Mark can't be here for some reason, someone else can step in, follow the SOP and set up the podcast. Our morning meeting has a 12-step process for how to set up the morning meeting. We turn on the TV, then we set up the PowerPoint, then we turn on the lights, then we make sure the heating is this temperature. There's a 12-step process to setting up the meeting, because the goal of every organization, not even a lean organization, the goal of every organization is to deliver consistency. And how can you deliver consistency to the customer if you don't have a procedure in place? And most procedures are in people's head. They're somewhere that isn't visible, so you might as well not even have them. So we are going all in, and we have went all in the last 12 months on this SOP like blast. We have SOPs for everything, for absolutely everything. And the result of it is that work is calm, work flows, value flows to the customer without any blockages, because when that person is away in Spain on their holidays, somebody else can step in and send the invoice or do the daily production report or send the marketing report because there's an SOP. So this, if we're going back to scaling, how can you scale a business if all the knowledge is in everybody's head? The goal for us is to improve the system, improve the process, which frees people up. So really, we want a self-managing business. That's really what we want.
Yeah, and there's a number of things in this, and I have shared this lots of different occasions, but first of all, it's that mantra that systems will set you free. It should be the goal of every leader to make themselves redundant, and because ultimately the more value that you provide to the business, the less valuable the business actually is.
Yeah.
So what we mean by that is the more dependent the business actually is on you, the more vulnerable it is to inconsistency when you're not around. And this goes for anybody within the business. And ultimately, it's much, much less attractive to potential investors. If you have, private equity in mind, if you have a trade sale in mind, ultimately you want to be able to sell this repeatable, predictable system. Something that is delivering significant results for you, but is not dependent on you being there to deliver those results. And that's hugely attractive to potential investors down the line. Something just to pick up there is the innate fear that we have that if we share this knowledge, if we write down what we do, because, I'm special. Only I can do this job. And if in some way I disclose that, well, I'm not quite that special, and actually I go through this process in my head and it's 10 steps really, and maybe some of those steps are unconscious now because I'm doing them that often. How do you encourage people to share what they do with others in the understanding that if I make myself dispensable in some way by sharing with others, then I'm much more vulnerable here to potentially not having a job in a couple of weeks' time if everyone can do it.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that fear? Is that something you encounter?
It's not something we encounter now, but I absolutely understand it. And the reason we don't have that fear is that our culture our culture is designed in such a way that doesn't allow for those fears. And every single person at our company understands that the goal of this company is to serve the customer. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about me having all the knowledge and I'm the only one that can send the accounts report. It's not about you. It's about the customer. So one of the concepts to simplify that, to break that down into a simple form, we talk about thinking of the next person. So if I'm thinking of the next person, I'm going to leave the standard work document so that when I'm on holidays in America, somebody else can follow that. If I'm thinking of the next person, I'm going to put a label on to say where to restock the batteries for the remote control for the TV. If I'm thinking of the next person, I'm going to leave my job better than I found it. So even if I'm moving on to a different company or if I'm moving jobs, I'm going to document my processes and leave it better for the next person. So this concept is something that we talk about, thinking of the next person. And that thinking is instilled in everybody's thinking here. Yeah. And that's why it's not a problem for us.
Yeah, I love that. And you've mentioned something there that is characterized, or certainly the All Blacks, the New Zealand All Blacks characterize their culture with something they talk about, leaving the jersey better than you found it, that they don't own the jersey, nor should they be arrogant enough to think that, well, this is mine now and kind of I own it. They're simply borrowing it, and the aim is to make this better for the next person.
I love that.
And this concept of really a servant mentality, it's a growth mindset, using that term that Carol Dweck has socialized now in her book Mindset. It's an abundance mindset. Even you sharing these 12 steps in a book and giving hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of this book away. The typical scarcity mindset is, I've got the magic sauce. Why would I share this?
Yeah.
But what I've noticed and what exemplifies the lean community, and we come to step 12, connect with other lean enthusiasts, is this trait of just wanting to share. I'm part of a number of lean WhatsApp groups that you've invited me into, and I actually can't keep up with the number of WhatsApps that are in there because people are so desirous of wanting to share their improvements, as opposed to the typical, let's say, fixed mindset of, I've got the magic sauce, I'm keeping it to myself. Yeah. So step 12, share with me the importance of kind of sharing the magic sauce with others, the others being lean enthusiasts, being involved in this community.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you the credit for step 12, actually. I don't know if I told you this before.
You haven't?
I remember on one of on the ScaleX Accelerator program at one of the events, you said, if you want to be a runner, join a running club. If you want to be a swimmer, join a swimming club. If you want to get better at tennis, join a tennis club. And I actually said that in the book. I don't know if you noticed that, but if you want to be really good at lean, connect with other lean enthusiasts, be around lean people. And that's what I've done. I've surrounded myself with people from all over the world that are really into this stuff. They just want to talk about lean all the time. And that's the people I want to be around. That's the community I want to be around. And the community is absolutely grown by the week. Like, I'm not exaggerating. In the last 6 months even, the amount of companies that are coming here on tours, the amount of companies that have bought the book, the amount of companies that are visiting each other that have been here, the lean is becoming the next big thing. And if you're not doing lean, you're being left behind. That's really candid and really direct, but it's true. People are waking up to the potential of lean. They're waking up to the results that can be gotten. And the real fast track to getting there is to connect with other people that are trying to do the same thing. Yeah. Most of our ideas, most of our improvements come from videos we've played at our morning meeting. and then we implement them here. So we're all helping each other, and that's the power of a community, as you well know.
Yeah, I love that, and who doesn't want to be around the community that is lean? And you've kindly kind of suggested that kind of you borrowed this certainly the initiative for Step 12, the inspiration for Step 12 has been something that we have shared with you. It's why I love doing what we do, Ryan, in Simple Scaling, because it's loads of Ryan Tierneys, and who doesn't want to be around lots of Ryan Tierneys, people who only see solutions, people who have aspiration to bring more value to their teams, to their customers, people who have this growth mindset, who are abundant in their sharing.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to be around that?
Yeah.
Thank you for that, and I think you're being overly generous there with your credit, but I'm a firm believer of that in getting yourself into the right rooms, being part of the right communities.
Yeah.
You've been part of the Simple Scaling community. You were a graduate of our ScaleX Accelerator program, now a member of our ScaleX Club, who are the alumni of those who have participated in our year-long program. What inspired you to come on board into our ScaleX Accelerator program initially?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, actually. Yourself and Claire came on a tour. Actually, you came on a tour, a lean tour, and we got talking after the tour. And I thought, there's something about this. There's something special going on here, because we had always been into this type of, myself and my two brothers studied a lot of the Bob Proctor material back years ago. We always would have been into motivational type thinking, and been to loads of seminars. And I remember talking to Jonathan and Martin after we met after the tour, and I said, you have to meet Brendan. He's like a Northern Irish Bob Proctor. So we just really connected at the start, and you told me about the program, and at that point, we have big plans to really scale our business. We're all very motivated, but it wasn't more motivation we needed. And I think a lot of information out there is motivational, but what we liked about the simple scaling process was that it's a plan, it's a process, like what I've developed here with Lean Made Simple. And we loved the fact that you can start at 1, you can go to 10, and there's 10 principles, and you take them, and they're all P's, which is nice as well. And you take them one by one, and you go through the program, and it's really slow and steady and consistent, because it's about a month, isn't it?
That's right.
Per process, per system. But we seen we seen a framework that we wanted to be part of, and we seen something in yourself that we would like. We like that motivational, positive mentality, and somebody with a Northern Irish accent talking about it, and we decided to get on board. Yeah,
and I'm so delighted you did. If I'm the Irish Bob Proctor, Claire, then that makes Claire the Irish Sandy Gallagher. So I'll share that with her. What would you say, Ryan, have been some of the greatest benefits for you as a result of participating in the program?
Well, I would say a very clear one is that when we joined the program, we had one company, Seaton Matters. Now, sitting here 2 or 3 years on, we have acquired 3 companies and bolted them onto the side of our company. So now 4 companies. We wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the program. We wouldn't have been thinking like that. We had big plans and big dreams, but the framework was what really helped us. And now we're 4 companies in. We're looking at 2 more. Martin is almost full time in acquisition mode. That's his niche and something he's really good at. Myself and Jonathan are supporting that in the background, and I can probably say that we wouldn't be thinking like this if it wasn't for the program.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear, because you have such an incredible product that back to what we said at the outset, if you've got a wonderful product or service, which you guys clearly do, then you have an obligation to bring that to the world. So I suppose it's music to my ears to hear the fact that actually you're doing that, and you're doing that not only organically but through acquisition entrepreneurship. And I'm obviously delighted to hear that part of the reason you're doing that has been sparked as a result of your participation in the program. Can you share with our listeners, because it was 3 brothers, a family business, maybe how would you characterize your relationship before you went in the program versus your relationship now? Maybe you're going to tell me it's worse, but can you share a little bit of insight there in terms of the challenges maybe before versus what you experience now?
I think with any family business, there's challenges in terms of communication is probably the biggest one. A lot of the meetings are around the kitchen table, and if somebody isn't around the kitchen table that day, they miss all the news. There was less formality before the program. There absolutely was. It was kind of, we would have had meetings whenever we were all together, and if we weren't together, we didn't go out of our way to organise anything more formal. So after going through the program, we have weekly meetings, we have monthly management meetings. There's definitely more structure. We have more defined roles, which is important as well. And we had all the ingredients of, we kind of knew how we wanted to scale, but the program kind of brought it all into one direction for us and really helped.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's brilliant to hear that. Something that you've alluded to is the vision for Seeding Matters, and I know through the program you crafted your own incredibly inspiring vivid vision. You've got your 10-year moonshot, you've got your 3-year vivid vision. Part of that, you communicated publicly the desire to scale through acquisition, to reach more people, to have a greater impact, to widen your reach. Can you share with me a little bit more about your passion for lean and your vision for lean?
Yeah, it's something that also came from the program, the Simple Scaling program, is that Seeding Matters is obviously here. It is the main business, and kind of like the spin-off to the side is Lean Made Simple. And without even wanting to, Lean Made Simple is growing and growing and growing. It's getting bigger by the week. And what I talked about at the very start is that, scaling your passion, and lean is absolutely my passion. And I think that's why it's scaling, because I'm so passionate about it. And we have our vivid vision for the company, but I also have a personal vivid vision. And I shared this recently at a talk I done in Northern Ireland. And as a few people might know, I've been to Japan 5 times. Every time I go to Japan, I learn lean at a deeper level. I'm fortunate enough to be connected with really high-level people in Japan who eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And every time I'm there, I understand that at a deeper level. And the last time I was coming back, just about 2 months ago, I was on the plane on the way back, and I was sitting writing notes. I like to write, and I wrote like 13 pages of notes on the way back on the plane. And I came up with a title for a potential new book, and I started playing about with the words, and I came up with this. And as soon as I wrote it on a bit of paper, I felt it. I felt like this emotional shock just hitting my body. And the title of the book that I wrote down was Make Ireland the Next Japan.
I love that.
And as soon as I said that, I thought, that's it. That's my purpose. Because Japan is the ultimate exemplar of efficiency, of productivity. It's where this whole thing started with Toyota and the Toyota production system. And we were kind of the first in the UK really to really embrace this thinking at a high level. And since we started lean, since I came across lean on YouTube 10 years ago, there is hundreds of companies now doing lean in the UK and Ireland. And this idea of making Ireland the next Japan really resonated with me. And I've shared this just 2 weeks ago, and the amount of messages that I'm getting on LinkedIn, the amount of messages I'm getting, on YouTube about people really wanting to get behind this and support me with it, and, reaching out to say, how can I be part of this? I love this vision. And it's something that you have always talked about. You've always taught us to put the vision out there, and then you attract the people, the resources, you attract everything you need to fulfill the vision, and that's absolutely happening. There's people asking me to speak. There's people wanting to do collaborations on YouTube. All these things are starting to happen now because I've put the vision out there to make Ireland the next Japan.
I absolutely love that. I mean, the hairs are standing in the back of my neck as you say that. We're absolutely aligned, and I'm 100% supportive of that vision. I mean, our own vision, very similar, is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose. Embedded within that is a desire to make this island what Silicon Valley is to technology startups. I would love this island to be synonymous with SME scale-ups.
Yeah.
And you guys are absolute exemplars of what this island can do. And in every corner of this business, and right up to the leadership and the way you guys lead. Ryan, this has just been value-packed. There's so much that we can cut and repurpose from the last hour. There's so many takeaways, but something we do as a routine, a ritual of the podcast is invite our guests to share with our audience 3 timeless takeaways.
Yeah. Okay. 3 timeless takeaways. I think the first one is it's a big one, and it's an important one, and it's something that everybody has heard before, but I'm going to go a bit deeper on it. So my timeless takeaway is life is short, reduce the non-value. So we think of non-value as in walking too many steps to go and get something, or having to fumble to look for your car keys in the morning. That's non-value. Or we've run out of a certain part and we can't manufacture the product. All those things are non-value. But really, if we take that up a level, non-value is anything that doesn't support your goals. So there might be somebody listening to this program, listening to this podcast, that is working in a company that they're just not feeling it. They're not in the right place. There might be somebody that's in a relationship that isn't supporting them. There might be somebody that has big goals and they're scared to take that next step. So life is short, reduce the non-value is my first timeless takeaway. Reduce the things out of your life that aren't supporting you. That might be a person. That might be the position you're in at your company. That might be the information that you're listening to. Maybe you're listening to the news and listening to all this negative stuff that isn't supporting your goals. Try listening to a good podcast, or change your what you look up on YouTube every time you go onto it. So life is short, reduce the non-value is my first one.
So profound.
Second one is a quote that's in my book. It's the last page of the last chapter in the book. And the quote is, the biggest gap in the world is the gap between knowing and doing. And I've definitely said this on podcasts and videos before because I love this quote. So for anybody who's made it to the end of this podcast, you've spent the last hour listening to all this information. It took us 10 years to get this information, and we're delivering it to you in 1 hour. But the biggest gap in the world is knowing this and doing something about it. So I would encourage everybody to act, more action, less talking.
Ryan, I couldn't agree more with that. A good friend of mine always shares that knowledge isn't power, applied knowledge is power. If it came down to knowledge alone, we'd all be millionaires with 6-packs, because all the information to become a millionaire and to develop a six-pack is out there. And you've just shared with me some photos that suggest you just developed your six-pack because of applying knowledge over the last 12 months. So I love that. The biggest gap in the world is that gap between knowing and doing. And again, the appeal to listeners here is to take one small action from this podcast. Don't just listen to it. Begin to consider ways of how you apply it. Number 3, third timeless takeaway.
Third timeless takeaway. Okay, so this one is be a sheepdog, not a bulldog. Right? So I'm going to tell a story, just to end with a story. Our grandfather was a sheep farmer. So quite a small farm in rural Northern Ireland in Limavady. But our father always said, if you want to create change, any kind of change, if you want to create change, be a sheepdog, not a bulldog. So when our grandfather was trying to round up the sheepdog would go into the field, go around really slowly, kind of hide in the grass. The sheep didn't really know it was there. And slowly but surely, all the sheep were in the pen. It was calm, it was slow, it was steady, and there was no disruptions, no kerfuffles, and the sheepdog got its desired outcome. Whereas if a bulldog went in, the sheep would be everywhere, all over the field. You couldn't get them rounded up. You would spend twice as long, 10 times as long, trying to get the desired outcome. So our father always said, if you want to create change, and even to translate that into what we're talking about, if you want to create change in an organization, be a sheepdog instead of a bulldog. Go about your goals steadily, consistently, one small step at a time, kind of hide in the grass, and you'll get your desired outcome.
That's a mic drop right there. That is so powerful. I certainly have been guilty of being that bulldog in the past. It's taken me almost 5 decades to waking up to becoming more. Certainly my intention is to become more of that sheepdog. That's so powerful. Ryan, you've shared your big vision. What's next for you then, in terms of realizing that vision?
Yep, so I've massive plans to spread the word of Lean to more people. One of the things that I'm absolutely focused on is being the example area, making our company the example of how that's possible and what's achievable. One of the things we're doing to get the vision out there is YouTube. I'm going all in on YouTube at the minute. I've spent the last year. So we don't have all these platforms where we put out our information. I'm just going deep on YouTube. So with thousands of subscribers on YouTube, it's growing by the day. The book is now available as well, which is spreading the message. So I'll probably write another book. I have another book in mind that I'll start working on over the next year. And I'll continue to do the Lean Made Simple podcast and the YouTube videos and put all the information out there to help and inspire more people.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Ryan, you've mentioned your YouTube channel. We've talked about your book today. Please go out and get a copy of Ryan's book. How best to connect with you if people want to learn more beyond the book and the YouTube channel? Is there anywhere else you would send them to?
Yep, just YouTube and LinkedIn, just to keep it really simple.
Right.
Those two places.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to end on that simple message again. Ryan, I want to sincerely thank you. My life is wholly better and has been enriched. I don't say that lightly, because I can now call myself a friend of yourself, Jonathan, Martin, your mother, Martina, we haven't mentioned today, just an incredible lady. I know you speak fondly of your late father, who has hugely influenced you guys. And that's another podcast in its own right in terms of the environment that he created. I want to thank you today for sharing your incredible wisdom, your experience and practical tactics and insights in terms of beginning this lean journey.
It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to host you on ScaleX Insider. I've been waiting for this for a long time till we got this book written, so I'm delighted. I wish you every success. I'm 100% behind you in terms of your vision. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Well done. Well done.